Hi, I'm Amanda McCoy Flanagan.
And I'm Ginny Oliva Smith. Welcome to Soul Rising.
On this podcast, you will hear honest, off-the-cuff, vulnerable conversations about all things love, loss, and connection.
Deep and meaningful conversations sure to pull at your heartstrings and enlighten your soul.
Again, welcome. It's time to let your soul rise.
Hey everybody, what's up? Welcome back to the Soul Rising podcast.
Thank you guys for being here with us. We're glad to be back with you guys.
This is season 2, episode 8. We're calling this one The Many Faces of Grief. And I don't know if you've heard in one of our other shows, I think we told you the crazy story.
This show didn't want to come out until today.
It didn't. We tried so hard. We recorded this thing from front to back twice.
Yeah, all the way. Amanda, you tried to edit it too, right? And it just...
We tried on 3 separate days. 2 days we got back to back. And then like another day, it just was like 2 hours of we couldn't even get it to record. So we were like, you know what? All right, universe, we get it.
We got to let this one go for now. Yeah, it was wild. It was wild because we just couldn't, it wasn't ready to happen at that time.
Not like us. No. Usually we can do anything, right?
Yeah.
And it just was like, what the hell? So we realized we were up against it and we were like, all right, we're just going to listen to the energy and just hold off on this one.
But we did, because here we are. Yes. It's like a perfect day. And it's a little snowy where we are, a little chilly.
And it was like 60 degrees like a couple days ago. It's just Colorado. I love it.
It keeps us on our toes.
But anyway, Ginny and I, we want to cheers to the Colorado snow and in our new Soul Rising mugs. Yeah, baby.
So excited. Amanda got these. Did somebody on Etsy do them? Who did you?
Yes. I got them.
They did a great job. They really did.
So we are so happy to be here. We're going to talk to you today about the many faces of grief. And, this is so important because I personally believe, and we've said this probably a million times on the show already, if you've watched other episodes, that the main source of our pain personally and then out in the world is that we don't know how to process loss, feelings of loss, because it brings us back to our childhoods, essentially. Something, a little phrase called emotional abandonment.
Oh, yeah. I've never heard of it, Amanda. What are you talking about? Big struggle for all of us, I think. That's such a common thing we've all gone through one way or another, whether you had a perfect childhood or not, whether it was relationship, there's a lot of, or whether we abandon ourselves at times. I hadn't thought of it in that way until you brought it up, and it makes perfect sense to me that we have a really tough time processing what we anticipate, bringing us back to that feeling of being left behind for whatever reason.
Yeah, totally quite naturally. Sometimes I talk about it all the time. There's a whole spectrum, and it's kind of just naturally what happens from the nature of growing up. You're left at preschool, or you're left in your crib crying, or you're feeling a certain way. And especially back in the day, a lot of the way the parenting was, they didn't really have all the tools to say like, well, how are you feeling? Like the stuff that we do now, our kids will be doing it a lot differently and a lot better when they're parents. But the way we do it now is different than the way it was done then. And the way it was done then, there wasn't a whole lot of respect, right? Children were seen and not heard and, all that kind of stuff. So just by the nature of the way things were, a lot of people in our generation have experienced a bit of that, and people still, they're still experiencing it, right? Like people are so busy, they're working all the time, or I use an example in my book, like Daddy had to miss the dance recital again because he's an ER doc and he got called in. So it's just by the nature of life. Some people I could say are fault or just didn't know any better or just were unskilled, but for the most part, I think a lot of it happened unintentionally. Just out of the nature of life.
We brought it up so many times too, but in that evolution of things, our parents were raised by their parents, who their parents grew up, in the Depression, where dad was away at war and mom's, these stories. I think I told you this about my grandmother, but hearing those stories at her funeral, that when her husband was away at war and they were living in another country, like somewhere else, and someone breaks into the house with her and her 5 kids, and her youngest is an infant at the time, and has her at gunpoint.
Yes.
Like, yeah, right? My aunt walked in on the situation and she was like, it's okay, like super calm, telling her, hey, he's just showing me Halloween costumes. Like, go ahead and go outside. Either way, like at that time, that's what they're struggling with, right? Where they're
different
teaching
day.
it. Yeah, different day and survival. Like the things you're having to survive through were our parents, same thing. And now here we are trying to figure out how to teach our kids to survive, the things we're dealing with now.
And we use the phrase a lot. Ginny talks about old hardwiring. It's like we needed those things to survive then, but we don't need them now. So one way that
Right.
we can sort of catch up, I
Mhm.
guess, or undo that and rewire, essentially rewire
Yeah.
ourselves.
Get the upgrade.
Yep, is by acknowledging and seeing, okay, where is this feeling popping up that I'm
Mhm.
so desperately trying to avoid? Because humans want to avoid pain at all costs. It's just like what you do. And sometimes I wonder if that phrase toxic positivity is out there, like always being positive and always looking at things on the bright side and kind of just glossing over the painful part or always staying grateful. Am I using, oh, I'm so grateful for my life and everything that I'm not giving myself the opportunity? It's an avoidance technique, defense mechanism. Like if I'm always so grateful for everything, am I avoiding looking at the hard stuff, the painful stuff that happens every day? So why we're calling this the many faces of grief is grief pops up. These feelings of loss pop up in such just mundane, kind of normal ways that we don't
Mhm.
recognize as loss. Change. I mean, change. Let's just go to like the biggie. Any kind of change. Good
Yeah.
change, bad change, whatever you want to look at it.
Yeah.
However you
Even
want to
if
look
it
at it.
is a positive change, it's still a change and you're not in the normal familiar environment that you think you've got control of. I think that's part of it. When we grow, when we change, we're going to be in this environment where even though we're hilarious because we think we're like little puppeteers and we've got control over all the things, we
Yeah.
really don't.
Right.
We don't.
Control is an illusion.
Yes, but we're faced with the reality of it when a situation changes, our environment changes, our work changes, our friendships changes, our marriages, our whatever they are. May not even be a divorce. There's evolution and how things are and things not being the way
Yes.
they were, or
Yeah.
relationships with our parents, our family, our siblings,
Hmm.
our friends that were like, oh, yeah, it's been my lifelong friends. We are faced with that reality of like, oh, I'm really not in control. So it's like the change
Yes.
itself feels like, okay, well now I feel sad. I'm not in control of this and this freaks me out.
Yeah. Yeah. And like we said, control is an illusion, and resisting that change is what
Hmm.
really causes the pain, right? There's like a Buddhist idea of it's not the pain that causes the pain, it's the resistance to the pain that causes the pain,
Yeah.
and just going with it, going
Hmm.
into it and like letting it flow and not using this like, oh, well, everything is, yeah. I mean, I truly believe everything happens for a reason, but like
Hmm.
not just using that as a way to gloss over it, but to remember that like, it's all the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
If this wasn't essentially at some point for my highest good, and trusting that maybe there's something out there that knows a little bit more about how my life is supposed to go than I do. Because if I look at all the times that I impose my own self
Oh
will,
man.
those times don't really go too well,
Yeah.
right?
Those times we're like, oh God, you think you're so great. I'm going to go ahead and take over.
Yeah. Get out of
Doesn't,
the way. You don't know what you're doing.
it
I got
never
this.
goes that well. And it's really is a balancing act because a balancing practice. Cause you're right. There are times it could definitely be used to gloss over like, okay, well, I don't necessarily want to feel the pain. And then you might be somebody who is addicted to continuously staying in the soundtrack, of like, we're going to keep it going. No, like my childhood was shit. I'm going to keep playing this soundtrack because that's familiar, right? So it's
Yes. It's what you
weird,
know.
this balancing act of not avoiding the pain and like you're saying having this positivity that's Pollyanna-ish and not real, but also not being fully on the other side of like, well, I know, but I get this adrenaline and like the warrior part in me or the anger part. I can attach to anger when I can still live in it and be like, oh, let me repeat why my life sucks so bad.
We hang on because it's familiar, but there's a
Yeah.
time. I love that song. Who is it? Who sings? There's a time for peace, a time for love,
Oh
a time
yeah.
for hate. That song,
Yes.
that's from the Ecclesiastics, actually. Did you know that?
Hmm. I
Ecclesiastes from the
did.
Bible. When
Hmm.
yeah, but yeah, so there's a time to feel, and then there's a
Hmm.
time to move forward,
Yeah.
right? Well, I'm not saying like, oh, we should always be stuck in the pain and we should always be
Yeah.
feeling all this stuff so deep, but there's value in that, and then there's value of moving forward. And then
Yeah.
we're
There's a
afraid to
season.
stay in it. We're
Hmm.
afraid to go there because maybe we don't see a path forward. I was in the car
Hmm.
with my daughter recently and I was crying. I cry a lot. I cry a lot in the car. and
Good.
music. That's why I love music. It gets me. So she was like, "Oh no, mom, it's okay. You don't have to cry." And I was like, "Oh no, honey. Like I need to cry and that's okay. Like I'm not going
Yeah.
to stay like this all day, right?
Right.
Like I'm not going to feel this all day. I'm going to feel it and then I'm going to whatever process, I'm not even aware of what's going on all the time,
Mhm.
but I just something shifts and something changes and then something else catches my attention and it passes. So trusting
Mhm.
myself that I can feel and then allow it to pass. But I want to hit on before we move on about
Yeah.
the good change part, getting a promotion.
Mm.
You're growing in your company, you're getting more money, but do you have to move? Right? A lot of people have to move for their
Mhm.
jobs. Do you have to switch departments? Are you
Mhm.
working with different people? And you really loved the people that you were working with on a daily basis. And now
Right. Comfortable.
you're not talking to them on a daily basis. You have to learn new stuff, right?
Mhm.
Now you're in a different position. So you have to let go of the way that you did things, your routine, your natural routine of, or maybe you got to go in earlier, or you got to go in later, or you got to switch your mode of transportation, whatever it is. It's like, there's a million ways that things change when you get promotion. So looking at that as yes, it's a good thing, but there's still loss there that has to be processed.
Mhm.
It's just like moving here. Like we moved from New York to Colorado, and I never questioned the move, but it was extremely painful because I went
Oh
through
yeah.
a severe loss of identity. That was the
Mhm.
loss that was around it, the loss of the familiarity of just the muscle memory of turning on this street, just knowing where you are. There's just so many big things and small things that come with moving. And ultimately I never questioned it, like I said, but there was a lot of pain around.
Mhm.
People were mad, people were upset, people were
Mhm.
felt abandoned, people were like they didn't
Yes.
understand. Why would
That's
you
a
choose to not be here?
crazy that's crazy you mentioned that because definitely experienced a bit of that too when we left New Mexico. I almost anticipated part of that happening too. We didn't tell anybody we were even thinking about doing it, but that goes to show you too. I was afraid, clearly. I knew what was going to come from the other side of that.
Yeah.
We didn't tell anybody until we were like well on our way, like
Hmm.
until a few days. We didn't say anything. So again, and for me, because I'm like, I don't need anybody trying to talk us out of it because I was the
Mm,
same way of like, no, I know this is what we're meant to be. But I don't think I anticipated as many people taking it as a personal hit to them that we didn't
yeah.
want to be there with
Yeah.
them, living life
Yeah.
with it. Like, this isn't what it is. We're just trying, we need to go build our family unit in a new chapter. I was like 18 months sober or whatever it was when we got here. It was like, no, we need to start this new chapter. But
Mhm.
there was like real, genuine hurt feelings. And I know that you can relate to that.
100%. When some people still don't understand, they still think it's about them. And I've just kind of stopped trying to stop explaining that this was
Convincing.
yeah, convincing and allowing people to just have whatever feelings they're going to have around it,
Yeah.
because my convincing is the fear of loss. It all
Yeah.
goes back to, if I can't get this person to get on board with me or understand or whatever, are they going to leave me? Are they going to stop
Like,
communicating
yeah.
with me?
If they're not comfortable with the situation, am I going to lose whatever exchange, of love, energy, whatever it is? Am I going to lose that exchange with them because they're not comfortable with this situation? And that is something to grieve because
Totally.
golly, and you wouldn't think of that. That's not something you would look at and think of that as grief, not out the gate. You're not going to look at
Yeah.
that and think, oh, I'm having grief over this situation because of how it's playing out. We don't think of it like
Mhm.
that. It's like, oh,
Mhm.
maybe I'm frustrated, maybe I'm this or that. No, that's grief.
Yeah, and then it goes back to, was this person not going to love me? Back to childhood. When
Yeah.
when even though those natural things like we talked about
Mhm.
doesn't mean necessarily that your parents don't love you, but when you're a kid from like 0 to 12, everything is about you. Everything is about
Yeah.
you. Everything your parents do, everything that happens, every fight, every this, every that. It's just the psychology. It goes back to, what did I do wrong? If I was a
Mhm.
better little girl, maybe my parents would stay married. If I was, stuff like that. So it's just the nature of psychology, but it
Yeah.
travels with us into our 30s, 40s, 50s. It's just like a natural feeling that comes up. So to recognize it and then also be okay with it, right? Like maybe that
Yes.
person's never going to understand. And
Yes.
that's the risk that you have to take when you're true to yourself, is risk losing
Mhm.
some people
Yeah.
and saying like, I'm going to be okay. And it doesn't mean that I'm unlovable. It doesn't mean that I'm unworthy
And it
because
doesn't mean I can't still have love for them. Like, it
yes,
doesn't mean that I have to all of a sudden draw this line in the sand of like,
yes,
well, if I do this, it means I don't love them. No, that's not the case. But you're right. There's that part of our mind that's like, yes, but this person has led me to believe before that if I take these actions or their emotional response to me before has been when I take these actions that I am
they
harming
withhold
them.
or they
Yeah.
withhold.
Or they
They withhold their
withhold.
love
Yeah.
from me if I don't
Yes.
do what they want me to do.
Yes. And what a crazy deal that we've done that probably for generations without anybody ever recognizing that that's what's going on. And I think you're
Yeah.
right. We're in a time right now, a different generation. We're in that telling you, man, I'm convinced Gen X. We're the bridge. Because you're Gen X too, right? Are you
Yeah.
Gen
I'm like on
X?
the cusp of millennial, I think,
Yeah. You're
1980.
more Gen X. You're Gen X.
Oh, I'm so Gen X. I mean, do you see what I'm wearing?
But I think we are in so many ways we're the bridge. We're such a bridge. And
We
a
are. And that's why it's
bunch
painful. It's a
yeah,
painful
man.
generation to be in
We got
because we're
one
breaking a lot
foot
of
in.
this.
Yeah, we got one foot in an old way and we've got one foot in the new way. And
Yeah.
a
It takes
lot
a
of it,
lot of consciousness. Like we have to be very aware. Like the other night, well, a couple of weeks ago, I threw like a hissy fit. Like I don't even know what it was. I was talking about something and I felt like my family was ganging up on me and I don't even know what it was. And I was like, well, if you don't need me, then I'm just going to go to bed. And I went upstairs
yeah.
and it was like 8 o'clock and I like shut my door. And I'm like, I'm
Did
just
you
going to read and go
slam
to
it?
bed.
Did you
I
slam
didn't
it?
slam it
Good
because
job.
I don't like the sound of a slammed door. So I
Yeah,
didn't
yeah.
slam it. But I did come back out 10 minutes later and be like, after all I do for you,
Still needed to come back out.
to prove my point as to why I'm leaving, why I'm
Yeah.
walking away, why I'm
Yeah.
going to withhold myself from you,
Yes.
why I'm going to take myself, right? Silent treatment. I can't not talk, so I'm not really good with the silent treatment. But that's another way of withholding love
Yes,
because
it
we're
is.
feeling
Mhm.
hurt. So you hurt me, and then
Right.
I'm going to hurt you. Hurt people hurt people. So like when we're not understanding that when I wasn't in that moment, not understanding that what I was feeling was loss. I was
Mm.
feeling abandoned by my
Mhm.
family.
Right.
It came out sideways. And I
Mhm.
felt like I needed to hurt them in some way. And this is just brutal honesty, people. This
Yeah.
is this is what we do on this show. We're human,
Yeah, and we
right?
need
I'm
to
human.
because, yeah, a little bit segue, but not even a segue. But that's what eclipses are for too. That we can look at our dark,
Let's talk
that
about
are,
that.
yeah, it's an eclipse. We're having a lunar eclipse, which the moon represents our feminine energy and all that good stuff.
Oh
The
yeah.
sun represents masculine. But I've heard a lot of talk and it has hit me in a good way here lately. Some of it caused me to stumble, but looking at accepting our shadow selves and knowing that part of the human experience is that we're going to have this side of us, like the dark side of the moon, that
Hmm.
comes from places of being abandoned, that comes from places of being, some of us are narcissistic and we don't know it. Some of us are, you know what I mean? We're avoidant, we're people pleasers, we're all these
Hmm.
things that a lot of the time is like, well, no, that's not really, no. And instead of embracing in a way, like and saying, it's all right that I
Hmm.
there would, for instance, and I'm using you as an example, I could probably pull up 10 for myself right now, but okay, that came out sideways,
Hmm.
and being like, that came out sideways, that I felt really hurt and that I needed to like put that on my family at that
Hmm.
moment because I felt like they were hurting me.
Hmm.
But probably a part of you was like, oh man, a little bit of like wincing at ourselves for being like, oh God, that was not my best
Oh yeah, no, I
moment,
knew it.
right?
Like 5 minutes. It lasted like 5 minutes, and
Right.
then I
Like
went
that was
out,
not my
and I
best
was
moment.
like, yeah. And I called my daughter up into my room, and I was like, "This is not about you.
Yeah.
I'm upset with Daddy." Blah 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 blah
Right.
blah. Because I felt like he was like egging them on, and it was
Yes.
probably joking. I think they were like joking, but I was
Right.
in a very hormonal, like very, and not just
Right.
blaming. I'm not going to say like, "Oh, his hormonal and all
But
that."
that
Like I
doesn't
was
help.
genuinely hurt, but that doesn't help exactly.
Ooh,
Like
it doesn't help.
we have this like idea that if we talk about hormones and we're like devaluing the feminine, but it's not that. It's not like, oh, I'm just a bitch because she's hormonal. That is devaluing.
Right.
It's acknowledging that that is actually going on within me and
Yeah.
honoring that
Yes,
and
that's what I
saying,
mean. Honoring the dark side. Because some of it, we hear dark and it's like, oh, that's the bad, that's the evil, that's the this. No, we can't ever be complete if we're not figuring out how to really embrace it and say, let me
Yes.
look at why. And you did, right?
Hmm.
Like that night you sat there
Yeah.
going,
Oh yeah.
ooh, where did
Yeah.
this
And
come
then it was
from?
over. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
like
it
when,
was very intense. What you're talking about is the fact that loss is just as much a part of life, or painful feelings and
mm,
dark energy, dark
hmm,
feel, dark, emotions, heavy emotions are just as much a
or
part of
dense.
life as love and joy and
Yeah.
excitement and happiness. It's a spectrum. We are human beings on a
Hmm.
spectrum of emotion.
Oh,
So if
yeah.
I'm shutting down that one part of pain and loss and
Hmm.
grief, I'm shutting down the joy. It's just
Absolutely.
there's a great quote, and I want to read it to you guys, and
Yeah.
I'm going to read it so that I have it here, so that I got it right. It's by Anna White.
Mm.
A friend sent this to me when I was deep in my grief about my brother. It says, "It is the capacity to feel consuming grief and pain and despair that also allows me to embrace love and joy and beauty with my whole heart." I had never thought of feelings or emotions in that way. I didn't realize that if I didn't allow myself to go to that end of the spectrum, that I couldn't feel this end of the spectrum.
Think of a pendulum swinging, and it's like it goes from this side to that side.
Yep.
And if you're stopping the momentum of having it go to whatever height it is, that's
Hmm.
going to slow down the momentum of where it goes on the opposite side. You're
Yes.
exactly right. So our capacity, they mirror each other. Our capacity to be able to, if we're avoiding the pain, I think of what I'm hearing you correct is that if we're avoiding the pain to a degree, we're also avoiding the love to a degree.
Yes.
If we're avoiding the
100%.
grief to a
Yep.
degree, we're avoiding the joy to a
Yes.
degree too.
100%. I like how you talked about, like, how you just said that. You're interrupting the flow of your own, like, humanity and spirit and everything that you're supposed to be in alignment with. You are basically just dropping the hammer and saying, no, I'm not going to allow that to happen. And you're only hurting yourself.
Hmm.
I'm only hurting myself when I don't allow myself to go, or I avoid, or my defense mechanisms pop up. Sometimes there's really healthy denial as well.
Yeah,
Sometimes denial keeps us safe, it keeps us alive. So again, there's a
for
time,
sure.
and you can judge that, right? Can I go into this? Can I not? Am I not in the headspace? Is this really going to affect other people around me in a negative way? Should I save this for later? Whatever it is, you be the judge of that, as long as you're being honest with yourself. So going into the whole spectrum is really, it's a way of becoming as whole as possible on any given
Hmm.
day, or on our journey toward wholeness. It's all part of your spiritual evolution, or your emotional evolution, your spiritual
Hmm.
ascension, however you want to look at it. And then tapping into all these different emotions on the spectrum is what's going to make you the most aligned with the earth and the planet. Because the moon cycles, we're talking about the moon cycles, we go through a series of cycles. We're not just one way and then we stay that way forever. We have this, like, idea, this thing pisses me off. We have this idea in society that, like, we're always supposed to be happy. Everything's supposed to be great. And if we're not, and everything's not great, then there's a problem. What's the
Hmm.
problem? What's going on? Oh, are they going to talk about me if I say that I'm going through something, right? Like, we all try to have, we have this, like, not
The
all, a lot
mask.
of people
Yeah.
have this facade, and it kills me.
Goes
Listen, it can't.
against our origins, I think. It goes against what we organically probably part of it again back in the day when we talk about it how many times, but part of those things kept us alive in simpler facets. Now they end up coming about in a way where it's like, yeah, we have all these facades and armor and things because we live in a world where it's like we've really, really been convinced we need a lot of things outside of us in order to feel level, including people's approval of us.
Well, yeah,
Like
that's
we
a
need a
huge one. And
lot
I
of
was going
shit
to
outside
say,
of us.
yes, yes, it's huge. And I was also going to say, including just people,
Yeah.
like, another huge period of grief that I don't think people realize is grief is just different stages of life, specifically your
Hmm.
children's development.
That
Children,
can mess you up, man, when you do not even see it coming. I've not been one of those people until about, and oh, of course, you're like, oh, I remember. I have been a disaster here the last year where pictures of Sandy are popping up or pictures of Steel. And I'm like, oh my
Mhm.
God. But what I find, yes, as much as I miss, oh my God, am I going to miss them? It's about me too. Cause I'm like, they were that little at that time. And could I have done better as a parent
Yes,
during that
yep,
time?
I just had that feeling this morning. I was
Mhm,
like, did I make every vacation or every packing for something? Like, I
mhm.
feel like there's always a stress, or the holidays. Did I make
Crazy
the
about
holidays
holidays.
stressful and create this negative memory? I actually asked my kids the other day. I said, guys, be really honest with me. I was like, be really, really honest with me. I can take it, whatever you say. When you think back on those times, what do you remember? Like, how do you feel? What's like your overall sense? Does it feel happy and fun, or does it feel like heavy or sad? And Lila said at first, my oldest one, because she probably remembers more. She's like, a little of both, you know? And I was like, yeah. She was like, a little of both.
Right.
I was like, thank you for your honesty.
Yeah. And you're teaching them that it's safe, by the way, to like be honest, because I think had I been asked that question and given maybe that response, it probably would have been like, really? For everything? I mean, not necessarily to my parents, but in general, right? Like, I would stay up all night to make that shit happen for you guys. It wasn't amazing, you know, but again, right? We make it about
us.
And you grieve because you go, did I lose, for me, what I touched myself? Did I lose the time, the opportunity? Because again, everyone kept telling me, just, it goes so fast and take it all in. And I was like, really? I haven't slept
I was
in
like,
2 years.
This part could go really fast.
I'm like,
it was hard.
It was freaking hard. It was hard.
You still look back with nostalgia and you say, oh, that was so beautiful. You look at pictures and that was great.
And we're meant to. I think we're meant to forget a lot of the really hard, because I don't think we have more than one child if we.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, speaking about holidays, we were actually taping this back in January, and we were going to talk more about that like letdown after a holiday or a big celebration. And what I learned recently is that there is more dopamine released in the anticipation of an event than at the actual event.
You told me that, and that shit blew my mind. Like you were saying, even planning for a vacation, that somehow the planning for causes more dopamine than the event itself, and that you can sometimes be left with like this, well, what the heck? Like, this wasn't all the things I dreamed it up to be, or didn't go like I anticipated. And then we're in a state of grief.
And then, and then afterwards you get even less dopamine. It's the dopamine, but then it's also related to then your thought process, right? Of like, well, that wasn't as good as I thought it was going to be.
Right.
Your thoughts can just kind of keep that going. It can keep that story going instead of saying, well, you know, it was what it was, and now it's over. A wedding. I feel like that probably happens a lot around weddings.
Because the plan, oh my gosh, the buildup.
Yes, the buildup, the expectation. So much expectation around these big events. Again, back to the control. Instead of planning everything to like the nth degree and expecting it to go the way that it's going to be so great, it's going to feel so good, just allowing these events and things to unfold. Like, of course, we have to plan. I'm not saying like never plan. Of course, you have to plan for stuff.
If you don't have a plan, or no, what is it? Tom always says it.
If you plan to fail, if you fail to plan,
planning to fail. Yeah.
There you go.
Failing to plan is planning to fail.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you do need a plan, but not down to like the micromanaging of what color socks am I going to wear on the 4th day of my trip. I can get like really crazy about stuff. Surprise. But I'm getting better. I'm definitely getting better with releasing the control, and
we all got those things. And you know what? It's funny, not funny. It's interesting you should bring it up. And I think it's probably good because there's probably people out there listening to this. But I was talking to a fellow coworker, not even coworker, not that I work directly with, but over the show that I had to do, that whole trade show last week. And she kind of came off very, at first sight, you'd be like, oh, this girl is very aloof. She's like not into, I'm like, does she hate her job? Does she hate like what she's doing? What's going on? Very kind of like detached from things, right? And then in talking to her, coming to realize she was somebody who explained to me that she has had OCD, but like OCD, legit, like diagnosable OCD from the time she was a child, and talking about, she was specifically talking about grieving the fact of figuring out that not everybody lived that way. And at the time, she was like, our parents, again, right? Back to our parents, not really knowing how to deal with that. She's like, my parents didn't understand why. And she was at the point of everything was done in tens. She had to flip the switch 10 times. If she hugged you, she had to pat you 10 times. I mean, everything. And she said, I remember feeling really sad when I realized that not everybody felt things that way. You know what I mean? Like in that manner. Like,
so is it like her feeling different? Like she felt like she was different, and then that's a grief in and of itself that you don't fit into a larger collective?
Exactly. And that people weren't having the weight of that on them like she was. She literally said there was a part of me in her late teens, I think she said in like early adulthood, that was grieving, well, why can't I freaking just like that person doesn't have to fight turning the switch off 10 times. What the fuck is up with that? Why do I have to be that way? I'm sure there's people out there that with whatever it might be, we all have not all of us. Some of us suffer with anxiety, on different levels of different things.
Yes.
So
well, that's what control is all about.
Anxiety.
I don't want to digress too much, but yes, that's what control is all about. So if I can control everything and know everything is going to be where it's supposed to be and is going to go off without a hitch the way it's supposed to, then my anxiety will be less because I know that there's going to be no problems. There's going to be no confrontation. There's going to be no feeling pain. There's going to be no feeling a letdown or a lack of expectation that I let somebody down or that person is upset with me. We're constantly managing. We're like constantly managing this fear of loss. Because then if this person is upset with me, then it's going to change our relationship. That's kind of what it all comes down to. But that's a very interesting, never thought of it that way of
or like the grief of it.
Maybe that's why we're afraid to be authentic. Maybe that's why people struggle so hard being authentic. Because if I don't fit into the mold that you think I should fit into, if I don't think like you, she's neurodivergent, right? I guess her thinking is different.
Yes.
If I'm different in that way, then you're not going to love me. You're not going to accept me. You're not going to validate me. I'm not going to be worthy. I'm not going to be lovable. It all goes back to this fear of loss of people and relationships.
And acceptance. Well, if you're somebody who's out there who is neurodivergent or you just don't think yourself to fit in the mold, then it might be something that might come up as grief for you and you don't know it. This is just another one of those many phases of grief. They talk about that even if somebody, for instance, who's got ADHD, like the truth of the matter is a kid by the age of I think it's 10, by the age of 10 who has ADHD, just because of their impulses, hears 20,000 more negative comments about who they are than an individual who's not neurodivergent.
Because humanity is just like dead set on this way of how things have to go. Yes. And this all goes into like the patriarchy and the system and the structure. And I mean, we could take that to like a whole different episode. But yes, it's all about fitting in to this mold of how it's supposed to be. That's why it's a really brave thing that you and I both chose to move.
Yeah.
Because that's not a common thing. Most people thought we moved for work. Most people move across the country or halfway across for work. We chose to do that just because it was what our soul was calling us to do. And when you follow those soul callings and your authenticity and you become more aligned, you're going to have to experience loss. It's just a part of it. When you are your true self, there are going to be people who are not going to be riding that wave with you and are going to be threatened by it. They're going to be hurt by it and they're going to pull away. But it's what we have to do.
And we don't have to say, okay, well, by me deciding to grieve this means that I'm accepting that it's ended or that things are different. It's like, no, you can grieve it, be sad about it, feel that sense of loss without having to be terrified that this is how it will be forevermore. That you can you can move through it.
Versus and that grief doesn't always mean over and done and gone, that I'm necessarily losing something. It's interesting because grief and loss go very much together, but maybe they don't. Maybe grief can come just from a change. I guess you look at it as you're losing the way a certain relationship was, but maybe the change of that relationship is actually going to benefit both parties even more. Just getting honest about the relationship. Like I've had people like ghost me, right? Like I've had people that were close to me, like one girl in particular just like fell off the face of the earth, like wouldn't return my calls. I think I was blocked. I mean, I don't even know what happened. I still don't know to this day what happened. And then I have another friend who was pulling away and I tried to like keep getting her back. Keep trying, hey, let's get together. Hey, it just was obvious that she just for whatever reason, I don't take it personally, she just pulled away. And I had to accept that. And I had to let these people go instead of trying to chase them and make them want to be in my life to fix it. Again, goes back to the people pleasing, the needing the validation. Because if I truly accept the fact that these people are not interested in me, that hurts.
It hurts. It does. And I find myself I did it just a couple weeks ago with somebody who, you've got this like, whatever it is, if it's a friendship that spans 30 years and realizing I was like, you know what, I'm going to call and leave a message, even though I'm like, wow, this is like year 7 of this person not once returning one of the phone calls. But I'm still like every now and again get this like, but I'm just going to let him know, thinking about him. And it may not be about me. It may have nothing to do with me, but I don't fit into their world anymore.
Exactly.
of
Exactly.
the
It doesn't have to be
value.
this big, bad, terrible thing. You know,
No, I
I'm like
just
this
find,
terrible person or whatever. It's just the way the world turns.
yeah, and I think I've become a little more understanding on this, becoming aware of my own energy banks and my own energy level of like, as I'm aging, right? I'm somebody who's like empathic. Where, oh my god, I was like my energy everywhere. Let me fix everything all the time. Like that was my deal. And finally realizing now they may just not have the space or that energy for me, and I don't need to own that
Yeah.
and take it as a
Yeah.
personal hit. However, it's kind of the first thing we do. What is
Mhm.
it about me that wasn't enough for them to want to share their energy with me anymore? Like I thought we had this connection, and it's
Mhm.
like they might just be fucking exhausted. Like a lot of
Yeah.
the people in life right now trying to figure out
Or
how to,
just our lives just went in different paths. Like
yeah,
maybe
which
there's
is
some people that
okay.
you're friends with because your kids go to the same school or you go to
Right.
the same church or you go to the same gym or you go to
Yeah.
whatever it is and you see each other a lot and you're
Hmm.
friends and then life takes a turn or somebody moves and then they get,
Hmm.
different friends or they just grow. Like growing
Hmm.
spiritually, doing the work like the stuff we're talking about. We go to different levels or wavelengths or whatever you want to call them. And
Hmm.
that naturally is going to force you to leave certain people behind. So maybe
Right.
those people were moving in a different direction in their life where I
Hmm.
just didn't fit into the equation anymore. And that's okay. And the most compassionate thing that I can do for myself and for them is to let them go.
That's what I found myself doing. Like, how weird that I've known this person for how many decades now. How weird that they wouldn't even think to just respond with a text message. And you sit there and go, well, why? Or what did I do? So what happened? Did I do something? And then you
Well,
start,
as humans, I
I
think
don't
that's
really,
natural.
yeah.
As humans, we're constantly thinking about ourselves. But then
Hmm.
going back to like the childhood thing too, right? Whenever anything happened, it was always about us. So that psychological stage that we're supposed to grow out of, maybe some
Hmm.
of us have not completely grown out of, or those
Yeah.
neural pathways have been carved so deeply that that's what maturing means.
Yeah.
That's what becoming an adult, that's what becoming emotionally mature and emotionally intelligent is about, is saying, I'm
Right.
not a child anymore, and I cannot respond like I was a child anymore
Hmm.
because that's all about me. And it's not all about us anymore.
No.
Not. I see a lot of shirts and bumper stickers, be a good human, right? If you want to be a good human out there in the world, you have to be thinking about people other than yourself. So
Hmm.
instead of saying, well, why did this person leave me? Why did they leave me? How about that's what they needed for themselves?
Right.
And I'm happy for them. I'm happy. I'm thrilled that they ghosted me because that's what they need for themselves.
And
They need
they
some
created a
lesson.
boundary. Yeah, they did something that they needed to do for them, which was better for them.
And if I can get to a place of this ultimate unconditional self worth and unconditional self love,
Hmm.
whoever leaves is not going to rock my world
That's
as
right.
much. It's going to hurt. I'm not saying I'm going to be floating above, like everything's great, but I can move past that. I can understand it and I can
Yeah.
go more quickly into that feeling of that's what they needed to do for them. And I
Acceptance.
respect it and I
Hmm.
accept it
Hmm.
and it's okay because it's not all about me all the time. And maybe,
Right.
and maybe it was about me. Maybe they don't like me. Maybe I've changed. Maybe I'm a different person. Maybe they don't like some of the decisions that I've made in my life. That's okay too.
Hmm.
That's okay.
Yeah. We don't need everybody to be okay with the choices we made for our own journey.
And that's a very hard place of power to stand in. To
And
stand in that power, to stand in like I did what I needed to do for me and whoever doesn't get on board or understand that, like it's sad, it's hard, but you're gonna get through it. You're gonna move through. One of my sponsors, she says, it's just for right now.
because
Like
it's the
we get
truth.
caught, right? We get caught in this like, oh, it's gonna be like this forever. It's gonna be like this forever.
We don't sit there when we go to the beach and put our feet in the ocean. And as we're sitting there and watching the wave come towards us and it hits our feet, we don't sit there with all this angst like, oh God, what's going to happen when the wave leaves? Because we know there's another one coming. Like the
Exactly.
natural,
Maybe a better wave,
maybe a better
right?
wave. And it's, I don't know if you think about it, it's almost like the reflection of the way our whole universe works. I mean, obviously the seasons change, but even with what we just had, we had the equinox where there was equal night and equal day. And we
Hmm.
have to have both in order
Yeah.
to rest, to grow, to nurture. We are spiritual beings, I think, having a human experience. And in that, we are a complete piece. And there's going to be these times of grief that come up. I think we don't even realize there's times where we might even be grieving an idea we had of something or like,
Totally. A
hey,
fantasy, a wish, an
fantasy.
idea. Yep.
Yes. Like, hey, but I watched all the rom coms. And when I get married, it was supposed to be like this. And then oh, it's not that. Oh no, like in this sense of grief, and then all of a sudden being literally just taken off your feet in a
Hmm.
way
Hmm.
because something didn't turn out the way we've been led to believe it should. That's a sense of grief too, where you sit there and
Totally.
if you don't know that that's what it is, we can certainly hang on to something and be very upset and resentful and feel like we've been cheated,
Hmm.
instead of being like, oh, wow, that was an idea of something that I thought should be in place or thought things should have been a certain way. It's okay that it's not. I'm allowed to grieve, be sad, um, grieve the idea of it, and then realize it's okay. I can let it go and move on to the next thing.
We can't ever fully let go or accept anything if we don't go through the grief process, right? They say five, that's seven, there are seven now, and I think there are even more. Anyway, that's the last one, even though they kind of all can go in between. But acceptance, you have to go through the denial, you have to go through the anger, you have to go through the bargaining, the depression, and then the acceptance. So it's like you can't, you're not gonna be the one to figure it out, to say, I'm just gonna skip over all those steps and get to that good place.
And
Won't
genuinely
happen.
be fine and genuinely think you're good about it because odds are that that's not the case. It's interesting. It's almost like you're playing a video game or something. Like you have to get through certain stages to get to the next stage. And
Hmm.
there's probably a
Yeah.
lot of things, and grief specifically, there's a process to grief. And if we don't recognize it as being grief,
Hmm.
we're not going to give ourselves the permission, the freedom to go ahead and go through the stages of it because we
Yeah.
don't even identify it as, oh, well, that's not grief. That's just something else. That's just me being
Yeah.
whatever. No, it's actually
Yeah.
grief.
It is. And recognizing it, feeling it, healing it, doing all of that kind of stuff, it's going to change you. It's going, like we're saying, it's going to help you grow into like a more evolved human being, which is why every single one of us is here right now.
Oh, yeah.
So, how can we do this? This is all great and I should grieve, blah, blah, blah. But how can we do this? My therapist taught me a great concept. It's called being a good griever. Being a good griever correlates to the idea of impermanence, the Buddhist idea of impermanence, which means
Hmm.
that nothing is forever, that everything comes and everything goes. And that's just how life is. So being a
Nature
good, yeah, nature of things, you look at nature, things are birthed and then they die, and then they're birthed and then they die. It's
every
just the
year.
cycle of life and
Mhm.
nature and humanity and what we're doing here. So being a good griever is that you can embrace, almost like envision it like a circle. Like you can embrace people, places, things, ideas, whatever it is, embrace it wholeheartedly and be
Mhm.
completely there, completely attached, completely emotionally available,
Mhm.
all in it with yourself and others, and then let it go.
Mhm.
And then embrace the next and then let it go. And the way that I do that is by understanding and accepting that everything ends, that everything will go.
Good
So
or
if I
bad.
don't, good or bad, except good or bad, right? This too shall pass,
Mhm.
good or bad. Not with this like fixed idea of like, this is mine, it's mine forever.
Mm.
Because then I get really super attached to something and it makes it really hard to let it go.
Yeah.
So being attached yet unattached is really, it takes practice. It's really a skill to be honed. So it's like feeling something completely and then knowing this thing most likely is not going to stay with me forever. And I'm
Mhm.
okay with that. Making an agreement with myself in
Mhm.
whatever situations I'm in, that when this thing leaves me, because most likely everything will in some capacity, right? Like your kid's going off to college
Yeah.
or the holidays over or whatever, like
Mhm.
knowing that that thing is going to eventually come to an end and I'm going to be okay with that instead of holding on so tightly to this feeling of connection. And of course we want to have that connection, but knowing that when it leaves, I'm still okay. I'm still going to be okay. The beauty of experiencing grief is that you have that growth process of coming home to yourself,
Mhm.
because guess what you always do have? Yourself
Right.
and God,
Mhm.
if you believe in God.
And
Those are the
that
only two things.
connection.
And it's the same thing. Yourself and God is the same thing. But yes.
It's the same thing. And it's, as you were saying that, it made me think about if we stressed out about every breath we let out, we wouldn't be able to even take the next breath in.
Gotta let one go
Sustained,
to let one come in,
period.
right?
Like, period. And thank God. Could you imagine if we were stressed out about every breath we let go? Holy shit. We wouldn't be alive.
We wouldn't
But
be able to function.
no, we
We
wouldn't be
wouldn't
able to
function.
function. But there's got to be a part of us, I'm sure, through meditation and exactly what you're talking about. How wonderful would that be if we could get closer to it being that natural as us breathing in and out, of not attaching to the exterior, the
material, even
Yeah.
like people, like
Yeah.
anything, everything is going to
Yeah.
go except your
Yeah.
soul. So, like the idea behind Brahmanism, Buddhism, it makes the most sense to grow your soul into the most enlightened spirit possible
Yeah.
because that's the only thing that stays with you ever
Yeah.
in the next life. And then I believe in reincarnation comes, and then that soul is the only thing that's going to go with you. So,
Mhm.
doing this kind of work we're talking about is so
Right.
valuable because
Yep.
you are learning how to grow that soul into the
Mhm.
most loving, compassionate, kind-hearted person that you can be, which is ultimately the goal for every
Yeah.
human.
It is, and
My
I think
goal. It's my
it's
goal.
for sure. And also, the more authentic we can be in that, and the more concentrated that part of our soul is, the more of an imprint we can leave on the blueprint here when we do go.
Exactly. That's what it's
You
all
know?
about, people. It's not about us. It's not
Yeah.
about us. We're just the vessels of making this place a little bit better than when we got here. Like
Yeah, the
making it better
evolution
than
of
when we
the
got here.
evolution of the whole thing. We get to be here at a time. You think about that, we're like a fraction, we're a little speck. But to
A
think of
speck.
us being broken
A
down into,
speck.
yeah, little tiny speck compared. I mean, even if you think of just how long as humans we've been here, the dinosaurs had us. Are you kidding me? They're like, I'm sure they were like, ha ha, you guys are hilarious with all your overthinking shit. We
Yes.
were there for 10 million years and got taken
Yeah.
out by a comet.
Yeah.
Like, very, very much so that the more we can start to do that and allow ourselves to recognize grief when it's something that we wouldn't see as grief, we can maybe practice a little more every day of letting ourselves go through those stages of the grief.
Yeah. So, like in the next week or so, try and be conscious of where that feeling is coming up of like a sadness. It could really just, I
Yeah.
think, kind of present as a sadness or a, oh, that stinks. That I feel like is the key of, wait, is there grief and loss here? Your favorite store closing, right? A lot of stores
Mm.
are closing. Everything's going online. That's sort
Yeah.
of just the way it's going. Or they stopped making this pair of shoes that I love. Like something stupid as that, simple as that. It's not stupid because it matters to you and it's
Mhm.
giving you the opportunity to tap in to this stuff.
Mhm.
So use everything that's around you, everything in your life, every experience you're having is trying to teach you something.
Yeah.
So use those moments of, oh, that stinks, man. I really liked that restaurant.
Mhm.
Just express, or to yourself at least, acknowledge and say, that really stinks. And not just go straight to, well, let's go to that restaurant. Well, that restaurant's
Right.
good. Yeah, you get to that at some point. But before you get to the what restaurant are we going to go to,
Mhm.
you have to sit in it and say, "Y- that that really kind of stinks, you know?
Let yourself be sad. Let yourself be
Yeah,
mad. Again, the stages,
you could
right?
be mad, you could be
Mhm.
sad, and sit in that for a little bit, maybe a few minutes or whatever it is when it's
Mhm.
something that minute. And then, okay, well, I can let it go. And look, that restaurant just popped up around the corner. Let's try that. Because that's the evolution of life is change, right?
Mhm.
So you don't get stuck, like we're saying. That's just like an example. Just let yourself feel. That's really all it is. There's no
Yeah.
big process here. Let yourself feel and
Don't
then move
don't try
forward.
to avoid it all and let yourself go through those healthy point. And again, yeah, we don't have to stay there too long, but to let yourself go through, like, yeah, it's all right that you're grieving this because if it was the pair of shoes, well, you started getting those when you were a senior in high school and they've always been comfortable. And
Yeah.
now all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, like those can't be gone. What are you talking about? Or a
Yeah.
store or whatever it is, a
Yeah.
restaurant. And go back to tying to, well, why is this that I'm really actually pretty sad about this? Well, it's because of this. And then
There
let
was an
yourself.
emotional connection.
Yeah.
Usually there was some kind of emotional
Almost
connection
always.
or made you feel safe, the
Mhm.
familiarity, the
Yeah.
comfort. That's
Mhm.
what it really is, Ginny. You just hit the
Yep.
nail on the head.
Yeah.
It's this, well, we always went there. Oh, we always loved it there. We felt
Mhm.
at home there. It felt
Yeah.
like, we knew the people. It's the emotional connection. And then realizing that, yes, that is sad and that does suck, but the emotional connection, that doesn't really even need to leave. You can keep the energetic
Yeah.
connection going. And then there's going to be something, new people and a new
Mhm.
place that you're going to then feel connected to.
Mhm. And you'll
So
be able
it's
to maybe be
fascinating. I
open
love
to
it.
that if you give yourself the permission to grieve it and look at it and no,
Yep.
don't judge yourself about it. Again, I think when we try to suppress things is when we end up even more so in that resistance mode. And if
Makes it harder, makes it
makes it
much harder.
harder, so much harder, especially in the world we live in right now. Everything's moving fast, you guys. Allow yourself the time to process the things that come and go because we're going
Yeah.
to be able to take more in when we give ourselves the permission to be able to grieve things that we didn't realize we were grieving.
What I'm thinking of quickly is all this AI stuff. I'm going to be going through a grieving process of originality from people, from humans. I keep saying that they're taking the human out of humanity. I'm not for it. I'm sure some of you love it. I don't, for a spiritual reason. There's lots of
a
other
lot
reasons.
of people who aren't.
It's not going to lead us in the right direction. It's actually bringing us further into denying our divine feminine. Yeah. But it's going to happen, at least for a while. So it's already happening. So am I going to resist it? Or am I going to say, okay, I can find other ways to connect. I can stay original. Yeah. Everything I write, every word that comes out of a post, everything that happens is coming from me and from my heart and from my soul. And I don't have to get on board with that, but I don't have to resist the whole system. It's like emerging. It's like, you guys can do that. And I can still stay over here and stay true to myself.
And not have yourself, again, it's same going back to that in my mind, fighting a tide.
I don't have to be so emotionally caught up in it.
Because as big as it feels, as big as a wave that is coming, you thinking like, I'm going to stand here and I'm going to hold this wave back. Like the amount of energy that's going to take is going to exhaust you.
And then it's going to keep me out of my purpose. It's going to derail me and bring me down or whatever. So I can accept it.
You could say, I get that this is this. I'm doing it this way. And here's why. And that in itself is going to carve out this new path of people who are like, hey, by the way, I'm an original writer. I don't use any AI. It's going to create a path, because there are going to be people who are like, yeah, man, I'm using it for X, Y, and Z. And it's super beneficial for businesses for certain things, right?
It is definitely. I'm not like anti-AI overall. I'm anti-AI for creativity.
Yeah, 100%. So there's going to come a point where people, because art is going to become a critical asset to us. I believe it in all forms. As we go through all this evolution, we're going to need art because it's authentic and it's the human experience and it's the reflection of the human experience. And we're going to be longing for that as more and more artificial intelligence is among us.
So just let it do its thing. Let it run its course.
Yes,
let it do its thing and trust that ultimately the spirit and the soul and the human and everything connected is going to prevail.
It is. And here's the deal. I know you can relate to this. Our own food and how things have changed for how long has been pumped full of synthetic things in order to create more profit. There is now entire chains of stores that are all organic. So the same thing is going to happen in that art form, that people are going to say, I don't want to shop at Walmart for my vegetables because it's full of shit. Just like, I don't want to read this book written by this person who used AI to do the whole thing because it's full of shit. I want to go ahead and read the book that I know was coming from Whole Foods. You know what I mean? That was organic.
It's organic. Exactly. It's all organic.
You can be a Whole Foods author.
So if anybody, I'm holding this stone, if anybody out there into stones, we used to pick them when we did our audio, when we sit in the meditation cave. And I haven't been doing it much that we've been on video. But this here is called Apache Tears.
I love this stone, by the way. Explain to us what it is, because I remember you talking about it and it's amazing.
Apache, right? Obviously it comes from Native American roots. I don't know exactly where it's mined, but it helps you through the grief process, right? Tears helps you with your psychic ability as well. So it's tapping in, feeling safe to tap in, and it's going to help you bring those emotions to the surface.
Yeah.
It's going to help you feel them and feel safe bringing them up and feeling like soft and like vulnerable in it and feeling okay to be in that vulnerability with your pain and your grief. And then psychically, I don't know, it's different for everybody, but for me, it's like, okay, now where do I go with this? How can I use this? Giving me the ability to say, okay, where in the world can I help others through my own healing process? So
I love it.
Yeah.
Love it so much.
Pick this guy up.
Yeah. I wanted to bring up one last thing too that just dawned on me the other day. Which is incredible to me to think about how much has happened in the short span, but this show has been alive for a year this month.
Yes, I forgot. We forgot.
Oh,
yes. I'm so glad you brought it up.
Gosh. Yeah. A year this
March
month.
2nd.
Yes.
March 2nd was our first upload, our first show. So yeah, if you're just catching us now, we have a whole season 1. It's just Jimmy and I.
Yep.
In the meditation cave, it's just audio. and it was
Love it.
awesome. We had our candles lit. We had this awesome, really good vibe.
Yep.
And then season 2 starts with video. So we've had a pretty great evolution so far in a very short span of time.
Yeah, we've had to evolve. We've had to. Well, and believe me, there was points I fought a bunch of it. Like just the life, right?
Yes.
We've had to evolve. We're here on video now. Like there's things that we're super uncomfortable about for me. Like I've had to go back to a job which has turned out, amazing. There's amazing things about it. But let me tell you, like I kicked, there was a bunch that I was fighting and grieving. But in our year's time, you're going to know better than me. But what
this will be our 20th. Well, this will be our 24th episode, and we're at about 2,800 downloads.
Wow.
So that's pretty good for only 24 shows.
It's really good. And it's very cool. And we're thankful to all of you. Thank you so much.
Yes.
And for continuing to be here, because Amanda and I on our own, even in our lives, we're evolving. We're becoming these things. We're evolving as a show. We've got things happening. It's kind of wild. It's a wild deal. And we're trying to continue to ride that wave as well. So there's no way that you guys haven't had insane amounts of evolution, both painful and positive in the last year, because I know both of us have. So thank you guys for being here with us. And hopefully we've been able to help out a little bit and continue to foster that in you, because the more that you continue that, the more that we will. And that was our whole point when we started this show.
And then the more healing can come to the planet. That's really the ultimate, overarching focus of our work. And we're not like, I'm going to save the world. We want to save the world. But I do truly believe that tapping into this emotional side of you and embracing it and loving it, giving love to all the parts of you, all that kind of stuff, is going to heal your energy, which is then going to just make life better for you, better for the people around you, and then they're going to pass it on to others. And then there's going to be more love grown, more peace grown.
Yep.
It all starts with what's going on in here. So we're so thankful for you guys.
We are.
We wouldn't be here without you. If nobody was watching, we would have probably stopped this 6 months ago, right? Like we wouldn't keep
Maybe
going,
not.
so.
Maybe we would have just listened to ourselves, I think, maybe. Because we're cool like that.
Exactly. But we're so grateful you're here.
Yes.
And so if you like the show, tell a friend about it, spread the word, get it out there, share this video.
Like, subscribe. Like we are on all the places now, including YouTube. So you can find us. We are happy you're here with us, and we hope you keep evolving and letting your soul rise as we are trying to do the same.
Yes. We're actually putting 2 shows out back to back because I skipped last week because I was away. So please join me again next week. And you guys have a great day. Thank you so much for being here. We love you.
We love you. Have a good one.
If this podcast resonates with you and you want to dive deeper, check out my blog, Get Real, all in on love, loss, and connection at AmandaMcCoyFlanagan.com. That's McCoy with a K. You can also follow me on Instagram at Amanda McCoy Flanagan.
See you next. Until then, let that soul ride.